and welcome back to the Wonder of Stuff. It's been 3 weeks. It's episode number 56. No, it's not. It's episode number 65 of the Wonder of Stuff Vodcast, broadcast supposedly every 2 weeks, but it's been 3. This is a place you'll find news, information, and commentary on science, engineering, and technology from the past week and beyond, and anything else that interests us from inside our tiny little human brains. As ever, my name is John Gardner, and to help us out on this journey to knowledge, for the first time in what seems like eons, 2 people, my colleagues, Richard Smith and Ross Davidson. Say hello, chaps.
Hello, chaps.
Jolly good. How has everyone been with their busy lives?
Not bad, not bad. Yeah, busy.
Busy, yes. That's why we haven't all been together for, well, 3. It's been about 3 weeks, maybe been 4 weeks. Anyway, so we're back, and since we came back in January, we've been trying a format of just taking one topic and just talking for 45 minutes on it, and that's still good, a good way of doing it. But we decided to mix it back up again. So we're going back to what we used to do, which was take a topic each and split it over the 45 minutes. So we've got some good topics, some varied topics this edition, and I'm going to start off. And I'm going to start off with a topic on and the future of cars. The future of, actually not the future of cars, the future of car propulsion. This is something that I completely took off Robert Llewellyn. Robert Llewellyn, Crichton, Red Dwarf, Scrappy Challenge. He's got a YouTube channel called Fully Charged, which is about electric cars and stuff. And this one was on here not so much long ago, and I'd heard of the company and what they were doing, but he had an interview with the CEO, and it was like, yeah, I like this a lot. So, the future of car propulsion. So at the moment we have, essentially, if you're talking about an alternative method of propulsion from a standard hydrocarbon-based fuel, you've got electric and you've got a hybrid. So your electric is fairly basic. It's probably not basic in the way to do it, but it's fairly basic in terms of describing it, which is basically a battery, which is fully charged, and electric motors, and battery propels the electric motors, propels the wheels, and the car goes forward. When the battery runs out, you just plug it in and you charge it up again and repeat. That's fairly easy to describe. Then you've got your hybrids, which are a mixture of an engine, conventional engine, and some sort of propulsion, battery-based. You've got your 3 different hybrids. You've got your full hybrid, which was the original Toyota Prius, and that's essentially your petrol or diesel engine, which is essentially a generator, electrical generator, and then you've got the electric side of things, which is a battery. And you can have the electric motor actually drives the wheels, so it's not the petrol engine, and the engine it's a smallish engine which just generates the electric current to drive the motor, and you've got batteries to store for the regenerative braking and stuff like that. You can operate at low power on electric. You can bring in the petrol and the electric to boost it. That's what the Prius uses, and other forms now. There's also this halfway hybrid solution where you have a battery and a petrol engine. The battery on its own isn't enough to propel the car from scratch, so you're basically driving on the petrol engine and using this battery as an assist or a boost. And then you've got the plug-in hybrid, which is a real strange thing. So it's 2 cars in one, essentially. It's a conventional car and an electric car in one vehicle. Now you can run these type of cars on battery alone for about 20 miles, or you can run it on petrol on its own, or you can run it on a combination of both. And that's something like the Chevy Vauxhall Ampera. That's the method it uses. So you can get a certain way on the battery. If you want to run it that way, you can go battery, and then once that runs out, switch entirely to the normal engine, or you can have a combination of both, which obviously ekes out the life of both, and one boosts the other. But there is the other way, which has been talked about and has been in a situation of a development environment, a lab-based environment, is hydrogen fuel cells. And there's one company, and they're a British company, and they're based in Wales, and they're called, but don't hold that against them, and they're called Riversimple. It's a strange name, Riversimple. Now they're a combination. They're a really. This is. I mean, this is where the British excel. There are a load of guys in a shed, right? And that's where we come up with the best stuff. It's slightly bigger than a garden shed. It's a decent sized shed, but it's nevertheless a shed. We're good at making small run stuff. This is a car called the Rasa, R-A-S-A, and it's essentially, I guess if you're looking at the models that I was explaining before, it's a hybrid model, but instead of a petrol engine that's generating electricity, it's a fuel cell, hydrogen fuel cell. And I'll show you it. I have it here. I have a picture, if I can find my mouse. Let me just go to here. I admit this looks a bit strange, and it looks a bit strange because it's very aerodynamic. So that's what it looks like. Okay, and on the other ones we've got it was designed by the guys who are some of the engineers are all from Formula 1, so it's very aerodynamic. So you've got these like big air deflectors and diffusers.
I like the girl working doors.
Yes. Now, so it's slightly unconventional to look at, but so it's essentially it's an electric car, right? Okay, so it has four motors, one for each wheel, and they're independent of each other. So it has a network built in. I mean the structure of it is carbon fiber, so it's dead light and dead strong. But it has a network based on the power distribution built in the car. So essentially, it doesn't have a battery. It actually has capacitors. And the reason why it has capacitors is because you're never going to be entirely just on electric. It's always going to be generated by the fuel cell. So the only time you need the electric, solely on the electric, is for the pulling away, accelerating from a stop. So it does full regenerative braking, as you'd expect, like most cars do. But I think the efficiency of this is like 50% as well, so it's fairly high. And as soon as you regenerative braking, as soon as you whack down on the pedal, it puts it straight into the capacitors. Now the beauty of a capacitor over a battery is that you can store that electricity like that straight away. There's no delay, and it only needs to charge. It only needs to keep them in the capacitors for the time it takes for you to stop and then pull away again, and then it whacks all of that electricity straight out again. So you have instant electric power. Yeah. So what do you think of that?
That's pretty cool. So in terms of obviously, one of the problems with electric cars is the amount of batteries you need and the weight of them, isn't it?
Yeah.
So in terms of this, the hydrogen fuel cells, do you have to have like an equivalent number of them, and are they the same weight, or is this like?
No. The actual fuel cell technology is it's an equivalent to 8.5 kilowatts or 11 horsepower, so it's dead small. It fits. It's about. I guess it literally is sort of a cup. I'd say 2 pizza boxes in sort of width. Obviously slightly deeper, but it's about that size if you think about that. And it's really rather good. I mean, this is in terms of technology. I think it's the first people they've actually had a working model that they can reproduce, and it doesn't have any real issues with it. They've ironed all of the issues out.
So is it a concept at the moment?
No. Well, it's they've made 10 at the moment. So I think the real thing. I mean, the technology is one thing. The technology is one great thing about it because they've actually researched it, developed it, and got it working consistently. They're funding it with a crowdsourcing project, but it's quite a small crowdfunding project. They're only looking for 3 million, which is fairly small when you think of like somebody like Pebble have just done a Kickstarter for like 10 million. Just now that's a watch, you know. This is an entire car. But the real thing about this project is they're not just reinventing the actual technology and the propulsion of a car. They're actually reinventing the model of how you sell a car, because now you go to the garage and you give them some money and you buy a car, and if it fails when you bought it, well, tough, you know, you get it fixed and you pay somebody else some money to get it fixed, and then hopefully you'll get some money back when you sell it. But what they're doing here is you don't actually buy a car. What you do is you have a service. You're paying for a service. Okay, so you sign on the dotted line the contract. They will give you a car. It's your car for the time that you're paying a monthly fee for this service. But it's a mobility service. That's the way of calling it. So they'll give you the vehicle. I don't know what the monthly payment is, but in that monthly payment is all the fuel is paid for. All of the maintenance, all costs essentially, all costs associated with the car is paid for in this monthly fixed fee. So if it breaks down, well, they'll fix it. If it needs more fuel, they'll pay for the fuel. That's all part of the contract.
Do they deliver the fuel as well?
Yeah, deliver it all. It's an entire service.
You have to live within 5 mile radius of their plant.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know whether the logistics have been finalised. Well, maybe they have. I mean, I might be doing them a disservice.
What's the range? Is there indication of the range on it before it needs refueled? I
think they said it was about, did they say 300 miles? On a, well, I say tank, but on one set of hydrogen.
Yeah.
And of course, obviously.
Sorry, I was going to say, in terms of hydrogen fuel cells, like you mentioned, the sort of idea has been around a long time. I'm sure one of the issues in the past has been the cost of the energy to basically create the hydrogen. Is it like still sort of like splitting water or something? That's how they create the hydrogen. Because I'm sure it was like sort of, it was more expensive to like you expended more energy splitting water to get hydrogen than you got from the hydrogen or something like that.
No, I don't think that's the problem that they're certainly that's never been mentioned. I mean, that may be a problem, but it's not the actual contents of getting the hydrogen doesn't seem to be the problem. But I mean, of course, obviously, the good thing about hydrogen cars is the fact that it just gives out water.
Yeah.
So you get electricity and water from it. But yes, so I think that the two innovative things are the fact that they've managed to get it all working consistently, the fact that they're trying to change the model of how you have a car, the fact that they've got this network of this power network within the car, so whichever the wheels needs the power, it just distributes around this network. So nothing goes back into the fuel cell, but once the electricity has been created, well, no, you can't create it. It's the law of conservation of energy. You can't create it, but you know what I mean. Generated. Then you can move it around the internal network. So that's quite cool.
So what's that timeline for this actually being sold? You say it's like a Kickstarter type thing.
They reckon 2018.
Right, not too far.
2018 they'll be rolling them out to the public
It's going to come down to reliability, isn't it? Mainly, and also presumably they're going to need to make a bigger and more attractive one.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, they're just. I think what they're trying to do is they're just producing a sort of an equivalent of what a car club would do. So a car club, except that you have the benefit of having it all the time. But a car club they'll only give you small cars. It's basically just like you need a car to get from A to B this weekend. You can do that. If you need a car to get you, your family, all your mates, and everything from A to B, well, that's a different proposition.
So the model actually is to encroach on that marketplace then, basically, and try.
Well, they did. It was been mentioned. So yeah, I think it's like, well, if people, I mean, because car clubs are great in theory, especially if you live in the city. They're all around Newcastle. They're obviously bigger in places like Manchester and London, because people. If you're in London, there is absolutely no point of having a car. It really is the most pointless thing, because the public, for all the people that go on about public transport in London being, oh, it's terrible, the tube's terrible. It's not. It's actually really good. So you just wouldn't need a car, but there are occasions where you would go out of London and you need some sort of transport. Now, some people, quite a few people, would go through a car club, and this thing here would essentially do away with that, but also does allow you to have, if it is your own car, so you do keep it, and you can go in, and obviously there's no congestion charge, and you can go into the city centre. So yeah, so I mean, this is a real cross post for Robert Llewellyn's video, really, because he goes to the factory and you see the cars being built, and he goes out for a drive in one, and I think he's genuinely surprised at the speed you can get to in one of these, because the CEO was talking and having an interview, and then he just put his foot down and he was like, whoa! So it can be quite speedy, and of course silent. So I just
still
thought
find it strange when you see electric cars and they're silent. I was going to the train station the other day and there was one parking, and it's just really odd seeing a car moving around when all you can hear is the wheels moving, like the tires on the ground.
Yeah, and of course, dangerous as well for blind people and partially sighted people, because
well, dangerous for anyone if you're not looking. If you're just crossing the crossing, thinking, "Oh, listen for a car," and then you don't hear one.
Because they were doing sound effects. I think you could get them for like things like some of the Renault electric cars. They could actually play sounds back out outside.
Well, most performance cars are doing that now.
Hey?
Most performance cars are doing that now.
But they're playing it out to get a perfect. Oh, you can set it in the dashboard, can't you? You can say, I want the sound of a tuned exhaust. Or
yeah, my mate's got a new performance car, and the sounds come through the speaker. Bit of a buzzkill, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it's because people expect it, so if it didn't make the noise, people would be like, well, I'm not having that, it doesn't make the noise.
Yeah, it doesn't sound good.
So yeah, that's essentially my topic, and I just thought I'd
what's with the name Riversimple? That's a really weird.
I don't know, and quite frankly, there is no explanation of it on the site. No.
Have they always been in cars, or have they diverged from some other?
No, they're all Formula One, ex-Formula One engineers.
Right.
Essentially, so they've all been in the motor industry in high performance sort of, and you can tell. I mean, as soon as you see the guys in their sort of garage, you just think that looks like a Formula One. It looks like you could be in the engineering department of McLaren or something like that.
Just got a photo here that shows you when you're talking about how aerodynamic it is. It's this photo here where you can see the back of it.
Yeah.
You can see the sort of the sweep down here, and you can see how there's a gap underneath. So yeah, I quite like it.
Oh, I quite like it. I mean, I think it's certainly unique.
Yeah, look better in black.
Well, I mean, yeah, I guess they will produce. I mean, I think I have seen a red one, but the ones that they certainly doing the press junkets with are all blue. But like it's, you know, I think color is the least of the issues that they need to sort out. But there's some. If you go to the website riversimple.com, there's plenty of explanations about why they're doing it, how they're doing it, what's the whole purpose and the goals. So it is. It might. I think it might seem a little bit utopian, but they genuinely do think they have a business, a genuine strong business case, and they've got funding. As well as the cloud, the Kickstarter cloud, no, it's not Kickstarter, but the crowdfunding thing. I think they've got, they've already got a certain amount of investor funding, and then they're asking for another. They're asking to get to $1 million, and hopefully the stretch target is $3 million. Essentially and I thought, well, maybe I could, because, you know, Kickstarter. I'm always a bit of a gullible guy for a Kickstarter project. As my bank balance would tell you. But they've also, the minimum investment is about £500, which isn't, you know, it doesn't seem a lot, but it's £500.
You get a ride in a car, though.
Yes, you do. I think I don't know what you so.
You get 50 shares and a ride in the car.
So you get a 100,000 will give you a name a car and take an option for lifetime usership of the Raza Beta car. There are 20 Beta cars, and the only hand-built and fully carbon fiber bodied Razas. So they're already. For 10,000 you can go. You get 1,000 shares, and you could go tire testing with the Raza with Michelin in France. So you get a holiday for £10,000. Yeah, so interesting.
Yeah, very good.
So that possibly could be one of, if not the future, it could be. It's certainly one of the options that we have.
Are any of the big car manufacturers looking at the hydrogen fuel cells?
Yes, they all are.
Yeah,
they all are. But like it is with most large organisations, they'll be researching it, but they're not going to go full on unless there's a reason to. You know, like this is the thing about cigarette companies who have had cannabis cigarettes for already ready to go for years. They're just waiting for something to kick it off. You know, when the iPod originally came out, it wasn't long before loads of manufacturers had MP3 players on there coming out. They need some catalyst to start it off, and then they'll go, yeah, well, right now, lads, get that out. So they've got it, and I mean, of course, there is the possibility, you know, I mean, you know, that they might actually, these guys from Wales in a shed might be further ahead than some of the big corporations. Don't know. Mm-hmm. Stranger things have happened. Anyway, so that's all I've got on that, really. So I think the next one, we're going to take a complete diversion, and we're going to do a genetics story, and we're going to go to Richard.
Yeah, this is actually like a revisit of a show we've done in the past where we've talked about antibiotic resistance. So in the news now is that a 48-year-old woman from Pennsylvania has a urinary tract infection, and she can't be treated with antibiotics because they've used the last line of antibiotics on her, which is an antibiotic called colistin, and it hasn't worked because it's resistant to colistin. Now, the interesting thing about that is colistin's very old, and it's fallen virtually altogether out of favour in terms of treating humans because it is nephrotoxic, which means it has a big burden. It's toxic to the liver, to the kidneys. So it's not used. And this woman hasn't been outside of the United States in the last 5 years. So she hasn't travelled, and they've tried an antibiotic on her, which is barely in circulation on people, and the urinary tract infection is completely resistant. So worrying.
So from what I remember of the previous conversation that we've had on this, the previous topics that we did, the last lot of new antibiotics was around in the 80s, I think it was.
Yeah.
And there was the common ones that were prescribed. The last lot of those were in the 80s. Then we have this sort of like the failback, the last option, and this is one of those.
That's one of those, yeah.
And she's now none of the current antibiotics that we've got will have any effect on her. Now, it's funny that you should say this, and I don't know whether this is kicked off from another story, but I was listening to BBC Science Now, and there was a story on that about antibiotics and how we're in deep doo-doos. Now, the last story, I think, right, this is interesting because the last story we did on it, I think I did it on it, and I think from what I remember is the way that they used to get antibiotics was by delving in the soil and getting out all the microbes in the soil and then trying to putting them on Petri dishes to see which one has got the ring around it, so it's like killing stuff, and go, there's a potential. But they say they've got no more. That option's now gone. Yeah. But there was an article on BBC Science Now this week, and I think what they did was they went to a company in London because they were saying they were making an analogous that Fleming was from this part of London, and this science company is in London, and they're trying to come up with new antibiotics, but they're doing it in a strange way. What they did was they went. The presenter went around the BBC and swabbed various bits like sponge from sink and the Dalek that sits in the reception at BBC, which has got a sign up saying please do not touch. They swabbed around that and stuff, sent it all out back to them. They did this test, so they put them all on the Petri dishes and see which one has got a ring of like clear around it. And most of them were from the Dalek. I mean, bearing in mind they were touching various things. They were touching, like they were swabbing public toilets and all these things. And the most diverse strain of all of these bacteria were all from the Dalek. And they reckon that they found, just in that Dalek swab, they reckon that they found 5 potential new strains of bacteria.
Yeah.
And the question was quite rightly posed. Well, if it's this simple, why have we not been coming up with them? Have we just not been looking? And essentially, yeah, because they got very arrogant. Basically, it all went back to the 50s. The 50s, they were doling, they were misprescribing more than even what we're doing now. They were misprescribing all sorts of antibiotics, and they had like a selection of them, and they were just doling them out for anything. It was like the new wonder drug, and they weren't even...
Hang on, what's the connection here between them finding 5 new strains of bacteria and antibiotics? I'm not understanding that.
Well, they were finding bacteria, which is the impetus for because this is how they used to find it out. They find out bacteria that would resist. And that's the start.
Right, okay. So you make an assumption that whatever 1 in 1,000 is going to have some secret in it, and so then the more you find, the more likely you are.
Yeah, but I mean, essentially, what they were saying was that people weren't looking for it, and it's not in the amazingly, it's not in the big pharma's plans to look for this because there's no really monetary value against antibiotics now.
Right.
So they're looking for other stuff.
I was going to say there will be soon.
Well, yeah, but it's down to the smaller sort of science startups who are doing these things. But actually, the story that I brought up the last time, which was that they found a new way of doing antibiotics, and it was something to do with soil, and I can't remember what it was now. But is there anything else in that story about? Is there any good, any light at the end of the tunnel?
How are they going to treat her?
Well, she can't be tracked, basically. So there's now lots of patients in this situation where so we haven't had a strain of bacteria where it's resistant to all antibiotics. It hasn't reached that point yet. But this one is like I say, is a well-known line of last resort, and the fact that it hasn't worked is a warning shot, basically. So the way to say that is that we're reaching the end days of antibiotics if we don't radically change. So if we don't either come up with a new suite of antibiotics or otherwise change the way right now in which we use them, it's going to be difficult. But she's not the only one. So MCR-1 is the genetic mechanism that the MCR-1 gene confers this resistance, and that was actually first discovered in a pig in China in November last year, and then because that was found, researchers then went and tested human samples everywhere. It was found in Malaysia, England, China, various places in Europe, the States. So this one that's affected this woman, even since that's happened, they've found it in farm animals and even meat in supermarket shelves now. So they don't know where it came from in her case, and they don't know how they're going to cure it in her case. But I think that the bigger thing is that if this woman hasn't travelled and this drug, the antibiotic, is not widely in circulation, it does beg the question as how is this mutating so easily? So yeah, I think it's basically a matter of time until because the mechanism is so effective and it can jump species so easily. It's a matter of time until we do have one that's completely resistant. Because of course, if it's resistant to 3 quarters, all it takes is for you to use last quarter intensively, and then that one goes as well. That's the problem. It's like it's a bit like we've said about when you lose biodiversity. Once you get down to the very small amount, it's kind of impossible to pull it back again. So I think we need to do some radical work about that.
But is it? I mean, if what they were saying on Science Now is true, and that there's no financial incentive for big pharma to continue down the route of researching any new antibiotics because there simply just isn't enough money in it.
As soon as it threatens a pandemic, pandemics is what makes pharma billions and if not trillions, isn't it? So if it escalates any more, there will be money in it. And I don't know, if you're a commercially driven organisation, would you not be anticipating that now?
Yeah, you may very well be, but they don't. It's certainly the knowledge of the people who were talking on the program that there's no real will incentive. Well, incentive that there was basically saying that now you have to. It's the reasonably well-off governments are now going to have to fund it because it's gone beyond something that it's a business thing now. It's now a human life thing, and then it has to be funded by governments or collective governments. Or something like a United Nations thing has to fund research into things like this because it's removed. We're at the stage now where we can't be insular about it. We have to do this for mankind really.
Well, yeah, we've took for granted these drugs, and it may be that in less than a century we've squandered them, and actually we can no longer take for granted that we will have a defence against these drugs. And when you go into hospital for routine treatments, it may be that you, rather than being, sort of being, as safe as getting on a bike, it's going to be perilous even to set foot in a hospital.
I have to say, I've missed your stories, Richard.
What? Why do you think I didn't put them last? Because as our and Filey's are normally like, well, I'm just going to slip my wrist. Is that all right? I might not see you next week. But it's an interesting one. The fact that
we your wrists, I would say, just make sure you're in a sterile environment.
You don't want any bacterial infection. Or it might not be the wrist slit. They might do
you. Might be fucked anyway.
But the fact that we've covered this before, and the fact that we're covering it again, and nothing has happened in between, and I think there was at least a year and a bit since we last did it. I seem to remember it was sort of the start of 2015. I
think when we did it last, it was threatening, and I think this is evidence that it's real, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it was before. It was, it's 10 years. It's 10 years of concern among experts in the scientific community, but now the public has to wake up to it.
I think what I'll do is after we finish this show, I'll pull together all of the bits that we've mentioned this in, and I'll put them all together on a post, just so people can see what we mentioned then, what we're mentioning now, and how doesn't seem to be anything changing. We've not heard anything, and normally we're pretty good at scanning the scientific journals, the websites and stuff.
Oh, there's definitely no new strains of antibiotics that have been invented. I mean, that hasn't happened for decades. So
no, I know that, but like I'm talking about research. I'm talking about active research into it, and sort of the flag of I might have something over here.
Well, this story is that it's being researched, because basically that's how they found it present in all these different places. They found this mechanism, and so now the search moves into finding a prevention for the mechanism, doesn't it?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, absolutely. So it might be depressing, but perhaps our answers in space, Ross. What a link!
Oh, well done. Seamless.
Yeah.
This might be quite a quick discussion, but it might not be. I just thought it was quite interesting. So I got a question for you first. What was the first animal to go around the moon and then come back to the Earth?
So obviously you want me to say something like some sort of simian type creature.
Yeah, it's got to be a dog or a small monkey, surely.
I know a dog. Was it Elka or what was it?
Laika.
Laika.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be that, because I don't think. I know there might have been, because there was some that went round and didn't come back, did they? Or they didn't come back live.
They came back alive and was, by all accounts, quite healthy.
All right. So is it mice or something? Are we talking that level? Mice and rats?
It wasn't mice or rats. No, it was actually tortoises.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that I never expected that.
Yeah. So this was, as with a lot of things, it was Russia that did it first. So this was something called Zond 5, which was basically the first spacecraft to circle the moon, to get to the moon, go round it, and then come back and successfully re-enter.
So and it basically, are we talking sort of early 60s now, are we?
It was September 1968.
Oh, so quite late, actually. Just before, only like a year before Apollo.
Yeah, basically the height of the sort of the moon shot between, all this build-up between Russia and America trying to be the first to the moon. This was part of that, effectively. So this was obviously wanting to test the effects of going to the moon, coming back and re-entering on biological creatures. So there was two tortoises, some wine flies. I don't know what a wine fly is. mealworms, plants, seeds, and bacteria.
So I guess all that was done is because there was always conjecture that people who were entering space would get so much radiation dose that they wouldn't come back.
Exactly, yeah. So that was launched on 15th of September 1968, and it took 3 days to get to the moon, I think, September the 18th. Went round the moon, didn't enter orbit of the moon, but sort of just did a flyby effectively. Came back, and then re-entered on September the 22nd. Now, when it re-entered, it was supposed to do something called a skip re-entry, which is basically something where you come in at an angle, you sort of hit the atmosphere, and then you sort of bounce up, and then you come back in again. So the idea
it's like Brexit, doesn't it?
That slows it. That first three slows it down, then you come back sort of in a more controlled way. What it actually did was just come straight back down and landed in the Indian Ocean. But surprisingly enough, even though that re-entry would have probably killed humans, because of the mass of the tortoises, they were actually fine. And when they looked at them, I think it was 4 or 5 days after landing, basically the tortoises had lost about 10% of their body weight. But apart from that, they were perfectly healthy. So that basically showed that there was no discernible adverse effects of going to the moon and back.
On a tortoise.
On a tortoise, yes, but you know.
So it was interesting because Apollo 10 they did the same thing with a full manned crew. I'm just going back to see which one was Apollo. Was it Apollo 9?
So which one did the Americans first send?
Yeah, so Apollo 10 they did the same thing with a full crew. So basically it was a test run.
Yeah.
So they did everything other than land.
Because on Apollo 10 they actually did separate and fly away and then come back, didn't they?
Yeah. So it must have been. Yeah. So it was definitely 1969 when the Americans first did it. So yeah, so absolutely the Soviets.
Yeah. But I mean, as with a lot of things in space, the Soviets got there first, and it was just, you know, I think this success of this actually spurred on America to bring forward their schedule for actually sending men to the moon. So that last step of right, we've been beaten for pretty much everything. We have to now step it up. Because I was looking at there was another Russian space program called Luna, and they actually sent what was it? They were sending spacecraft. The first one, Luna 1, was actually in 1959, but it actually missed the moon. It was supposed to impact on the moon. It was supposed to actually land, well, not land, actually impact. And that became the first spacecraft to fall into orbit around the sun, because it missed the moon and ended up going around the sun. And then in 1966, Luna 10 became the first artificial satellite of the moon. So that was the first one to actually enter orbit around the moon. They had the first photographs of the far side, which was 1959 as well, actually, of the moon. And I think they had the first lander as well. Although that might have been after. Is that after 1970? Yeah, after the moon landings. But Russia basically got first for a lot of things. You know, obviously you know things about like the first man, Yuri Gagarin, and all that sort of thing. But there's a load of other ones they got first on as well.
So yeah, so it was quite interesting. It was Apollo 8. Apollo 8 was the first one to go to the moon, and that was December 21st, 1968. So it was obviously that was in September, wasn't it? The Russian one. So they obviously brought. It does say the mission was originally planned as Apollo 9, and going to be performed in early 1969. But they brought it forward.
Just shows you how much was happening at that time. You know.
Oh yeah, it would have been so exciting to sort of see all this. I mean, the interesting thing, obviously, the Russians, they wouldn't have been like advertising that they were doing this. All of this would have been found out by probably, you know, scientists with radio telescopes and just happening to pick up stuff.
Ham radio guys were a lot of this stuff was recorded that wasn't gone down the official NASA feed, they were getting the direct feed and intercepting it and basically recording all of these transmissions and recording all the information.
When there's a load of the Russian space program that's never been officially reported. Even in their official documents that are out now, they've left details out
critical, is it?
Of launches.
Redacted.
Yeah, they've just failed to mention that they actually did things.
And is that because they only wanted to tell you the good things and some of the stuff failed?
Probably, I would have thought so. Yeah. They'd probably just report their successes rather than their failures. Mm-hmm.
Interesting, and amazingly, 45 minutes.
Hey.
If we'd planned it, we couldn't have got it any better. So that's episode 65 of The Wondrous Stuff. 3 of us back together, 3 stories, 3 bits of information that some of us didn't know. And hopefully you didn't know that, or if you did know that and we've got it all wrong, then tell us. As always, we have our 3 methods of communication. 1, we have email, wondrousstuff@gmail.com. We all have access to that mailbox. Please send us some stuff. 2, we have the website, wondrousstuff.com. Please go there. You'll have a link to all of the videos that we do for YouTube and all of the audio versions and all the list of everything else. And if anybody else wants to blog anything, it all goes on there. And the new method, which is 3, Twitter feed. Finally, after 2 years or something, we've got a Twitter feed at Wondrous Stuff, because amazingly nobody had taken it by sheer fluke. And so what we do with this is I post some sciencey stories that are probably pretty interesting, mildly interesting, but we won't have time to do them. Or if I've got time at lunch, I'll put some comment on them and we'll send them out there. And we're starting to get build up a following, and we're starting to get people who are retweeting some of the stuff that I post. And so have a look at that. Sign up. There's a link on the main website to go there, or just go to Twitter and go to @WondrousStuff and say, follow. Nothing could be simpler. So that's 65 out of the way, and we're back. We're recharged. We're going at it with a vengeance. And we'll see you in 2 weeks' time. So until then, everybody, goodbye.
Bye.